this year or next. So we're going to come up on the holiday season. We're going to have a nice. So, all right. Well, with that, I'm going to sit down and hush up and let talk. For those of you that have not been here before, Rick will chat with us for as long as we can.
As long as you can tolerate it.
As long as we can get it to talk, right? So,
no.
All right. And then afterward, Rick's finished. We'll do a little bit of Q&A if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Yep. And then we have a few items to be meant for the swap. If you have a chance to look, there are some things on the table. Looks like we got some plants and a couple of other dry goods. If you want to put a bid on that, they should have a buy it now price. If not, we will do the auction as we start to wrap up. So it'll be about the last half. All right, with that, I'm going to push Rick.
Well, is this working or is this what's this for? Take this off?
Yes, it's working.
Oh, for your recording. I got you. Now I'm catching on. All right. So my name is Rick Preuss. I'm 65, so 60 years ago, my mother opened the first fish store that we had. It was in a town called Troutville, Pennsylvania. And it was no larger than maybe 300 square foot. But as a 5-year-old, listening to that room with nothing but bubble up corner filters, I mean, it's kind of like it got me at that, as a little kid walking in there, watching my mother do what she did. And it's what she did and how she did it that kind of led us in the direction that puts us where we are today. And I would say that the most important aspect to having a pet store, having a fish store, we're a full line pet store, is just connecting with the public, being there for the public, and trying to create an institution that can actually be a true service to the community. And that started out at 2,000 square foot. Now we are 25,000 square foot. So it's a big facility. Not all of that is front retail. Some of that space, we have a fish propagation room. Maybe some of you I might have taken back there. We have a quarantine facility. We have a huge amount of space for just inventory. With a store that big, it helps to have a place to store inventory and back. And then we also have a classroom, which, clubs have been there before and just kind of met. If you guys have a bus tour coming up and you want to have the room for a little bit, that's fantastic. But we do a lot of birthday parties, and from that, there's a lot of educational outreach there. Because every birthday party gets a little tour through the store, and every birthday party gets a guided, like a person going in and just teaching them what might be appropriate for the child that's there. And some people might have a fascination with something aquatic, some maybe birds. So we get different staff members that are knowledgeable in those areas to come down and talk or present or give an opportunity. So that's the fun part about owning the store. And I think we were talking a little bit about earlier when we were here, synergistic missions, okay? What your mission here is might be similar to, but not the same as mine. But I do find that clubs have a tendency of being a very symbiotic partner to something like a good pet store. And why? A good pet store can bring people into the marketplace at a level that they're at, right? So if they're thinking about getting in the hobby, we have an incentive. We want clientele. We want people to come back. We want people to enjoy our fish. We also find that if we don't take the time that it takes to really give them all the attention they need, they tend to fail, right? We all have those disasters that we wish we would have avoided. And so everything that we go about kind of focuses around avoiding those disasters. So what would that be? If you're going to have a customer come in for the first time or want to get into the hobby or has been in the hobby and is having a kind of a disastrous or a potentially bad pathway, there is the internet. there is a lot of learning. I can say that people come in oftentimes more educated now than before, but even then it seems like they're loaded with some information that might need a little extra guidance, right? Because they're almost like, here's something that can really make you, like, here's your CO2 system, right? I'm going to go do it, but not with as much guidance as they could use. And so trying to kind of walk them into that and giving them information that they need can really be helpful. But I would say if there's a mission that our store has, the flagship would simply be, that started from the very beginning, is just to be a catalyst in the community such that people that are getting into the hobby of keeping pets are more successful because they came through our store, right? I have a fella that we've kind of, to the advantage of the clubs, I would say 2 years ago, uh, we decided to kind of put the sale up in a slightly different direction in our fish room, which is pretty cool in that we started doing a lot more. Well, historically, we've always worked well with our distributors. We always had distributors we would buy from. Distributors buy from great regions all around the world. And then from their selected choices, we would buy those fish and bring them in. And occasionally we'd do what's called transshipping. But we've honestly we've kind of made a transition over the last couple of years to be pretty much predominantly um, transship, which simply means we're now buying the fish from the same farmers, typically throughout, a lot of them in Asia, but we're getting shipments from Africa, India, Sri Lanka, and then Colombia, Brazil, bringing in these fish. Now, what's cool about that is there's fish now that we have in our store that we never thought we would have had. There's fish in our store now that I never knew existed. And that's pretty cool. And the reason why they're now from the same suppliers that our distributor buys from, but now in our store they never were before, is that they, something like maybe a red-tailed penguin tetra, right? It's through the distribution, the price gets too expensive, and it just doesn't sell in large enough quantities at that price. So it just doesn't make sense for them. But for us, we can bring it in and still try to make a livelihood. We can still mark that up to a point where we can still sell that fish and have something in our store. So I have, like, I don't know, I'd say maybe 15 various tetras in our store that I've never seen before, right? That 2, 3 years ago we never get in. So, and that's brought to you by a fellow that works for me. He's kind of my buyer. He lives in Kalamazoo, which isn't right around the corner from Lansing, but he comes up and also will sometimes be on the floor. His name's Kapil. He spent 5 years uh, in his studies studying the arapaima in the Amazon. So for 5 years, he would spend several months of his summers in the Amazon. He's just a guy that's pretty special and fantastic, and he gives a lot of talks to organizations just like this. I'm sure he'd love to come down and give a talk about South America and the Amazon, and he has plenty of other. He actually is now working for Project Piaba. Raise your hands if you know Project Piaba. Okay. For those who don't know Project Piaba, it's a great way of conveying the value of our aquarium hobby in a way that you would never expect. And it was started, one of the aquariums, I don't remember if it's Woods Hole or whatnot, but a fella that was a conservationist was down into the Amazon, and he spent a lot of time there trying to understand what the fish hobby was doing to the Amazon forest. And the actual light turning on was that he realized that actually it's the absence of the collection of fish, one of the signature fish would be the cardinal tetra, that was accelerating loss of habitat. And you're like, what do you mean? And if you think about it, a very hard working generation developed this infrastructure that established the tropical fish hobby coming from the Amazon River. right? Just, it takes a lot of hard work. You're on a small little raft. You're kind of having to figure out how to get those all the way down to the Mindanao, and not an easy chore, but that was the family's efforts. When captive rearing of cardinal tetras came about, there wasn't nearly the demand for the cardinal tetra, so less and less individuals were were fighting the fight, if you will, offering captive or wild caught cardinal tetras. Well, he could easily correlate the loss of that became the lack of anybody looking and seeing what's going on in the ecosystem. If you have terrible cloudy water coming down from a burn event of the forest, it starts to show up. You want to protect that river and the animals that you keep, right? That you collect. There's nothing more sustainable, for instance, than a cardinal tetra because they're all, going to demise at the end, and the amount of volumes of cardinal tetras that are available are enormous. So it's just that signature fish that kind of showed, once he did the research and understood the lack of people living and living off of those creatures created more of a problem. So now there's Project Piaba that's trying to actually have a resurgence of hobbyists purchasing, distributors distributing, retailers buying and selling captive raised or wild caught fish. It's very interesting. But the reason I brought that up is I asked Kapil, who actually is more in this mental thinking as a more focused fish hobbyist than I, to just throw a slide show together of pictures. I have not seen any of these pictures. So, and from his eyes, I want to kind of see what his view of the store is, and then share that view of the store with you guys. If it doesn't seem to be working out, we'll shift gears because there's plenty of other things I can talk about. But let's see what he's got. Oh, we can go backwards. Well, there's a nice shot. We got to go back one. That's a front. One of these palm trees. There's actually a cool scrap fest that goes on annually, and I bought the palm trees from a scrap fest. You have two right next door to us is a scrap yard, and you got 2 hours as an artist to go in and collect all the stuff that you can, and then you have like 2 months to make something out of it. And then they right downtown, or right down this. We're in this old part of Lansing. It's called Old Town. It's just all old storefront buildings and stuff. So it's really, really cool. Great places to come and eat. Really great restaurants. But you go. They close off that whole neighborhood, and then they have all these art pieces. And so I've got that one. I've got his name's Chauncey. It's a big green monster out front when you walk in. You've seen him. We've got some. What else did we get? Oh, just recently we picked up Mr. Potato Head. My daughter was just fascinated with Mr. Potato Head. He's huge, about that big, made out of metal, really fantastic. And he has a big sign that he holds, and then we put down whose birthday party is going on. We put him right outside the front door just to be a welcome man. So that's one view of our store. Just down the street from that, in the Old Town neighborhood, they used to call it North Lansing. It was kind of North Lansing against the world as they kind of developed their image or the reputation back in the 20s and 30s. And my great-grandfather and my grandfather are standing there in front of what was a meat market. And that building there is today. Unfortunately, it's going to be torn down pretty soon here. But that's my great-grandfather and grandfather, and it's right in the same neighborhood. There's a river that runs right down through the area. Every time I walk across the street or over the river, I always think about my ancestors in the same area. However, they sold them by the pound. I sell them by the piece. So let's see what else he's got. So when we built the store, that's my brother, one on the left, and you'll see a big waterfall as you pull into the store. And my brother, when it came to the mechanics of building the store, is the genius. He's not a general contractor or anything like that. He's just very, very smart, very, very physical and capable. One day I came in, very resourceful. So it's got really high ceilings. real high ceilings. And he had noticed where the roof was starting to kind of like collapse um, because they had put something in where there used to be skylights, but they didn't do it right. So he went and he put from the scrapyard, he picked up a bunch of metal bars, and for 130 feet, he welded up to that wood frame that metal that they could work off of. And I come in, I didn't know anything about this. I come in, we had borrowed a friend's scissor lift, and so what he did is he had a refrigerator on top of a scissor lift, and he was standing on top of the refrigerator to weld the so it was quite we started this store. We moved from the suburbs into the right downtown. People thought we were crazy. Definitely everybody thought I was crazy. But my brother, we knew we could do it. And he had a vision. I had a vision. And he built this beautiful waterfall. You'll see a Triumph in the store. The bus, the school bus that's there, that was my idea. I came home one night after we decided to buy the building, and we had to plan it all out. First time we ever had a big building, because in the past, out in the suburbs, we started out 2,000 square foot. They got large. Well, everything started falling off the wall, so we expanded to 4,000 square foot in the plaza, and then it kept getting bigger. So then we expanded to 6,000 square foot, and that was all kind of pieced up because it was a fitness center. And then we expanded next door, and then we moved down the street, and we had to take over one building, then another, and that was 9,300 square foot. That's what happens when you start a business back in 1982 and you stay at it, right? So this is the first opportunity we ever had to have such a large building, and I was really excited. But I knew, because I went to a friend of mine, just put in a new building, his store. He used to have a fish store down in Louisville in a house, and it was really cool. You walk in there every corner. It was fun. You just, bam, greatness. Fish here, fish there. It was dark. It was lit. It was fantastic. And I went into a shop. Just happened to be, I came first week they were open. I walked in. It was this really big open building. I'm like, oh. So when we built this building, just because it looked, I don't know, plain, it was like, yeah, I get it. And it was strategic, it was efficient, it was nice, and it was clean, and it was organized. It just wasn't me. So I liked his old store better. Just like I knew my store that had built up corner after corner in here and this nook and this was really cool. So we had to build character into this big building. This is the first Ford dealer in Lansing. It was put in around 1928. And so it was just before they figured out how to like use welding. So everything's put together by bolts, right? And it's a huge, beautiful inside. Just like you had me at the rafters when I looked at the building. I had to have it. So my brother helped build waterfalls and elements that when you walk in, it's like, well, that's not your usual pet store, you know. So let's see what we got. There's the waterfall he put in. That's the completed job. There he is, Chauncey. I didn't know he'd be in this. Look at that. Now he's named Chauncey because my grandfather on my mom's side. You see those ears? See those lips? And somebody the other day was saying, was he named after you? And I'm like, no, that's my grandfather. And I was like, but thanks for the flattering idea. He's pretty cool. Everybody likes to come around. Well, not everybody, but you will find from time to time, if you're watching, people will kind of sneak around the back and pinch his buns because his buns are really cute. There's me. There's a river through the store. Okay, it's a couple thousand gallons or so. It starts at the register and then works its way through. If we go back a little bit, see if I can show you. See to the left here of this waterfall? That used to be a garage door. I kind of had the idea of cutting it open and then it slants back so the water pools back into the store. but they're separate from each other, so they're not connected. And so, but when you walk in, you think it's all one river. People think it's the same as outside, and so that's the day we were going to lay concrete. That's how we laid it out for concrete in order to do that. We put foam all the way along the bottom so it's insulated. We have some Oxidor's Niger cats, which are fantastic. Didn't know what it was. Raise your hands if you know what an Oxidor's Niger cat is, or a ripsaw catfish. Ripsaw catfish, right? Now these guys, I wish we had a picture. That's what happens when you don't organize this. But back in 1986, I went into a fish store that was going out of business. An example of his value statement is he spent every week going to Myers to see what their prices were, so he'd be cheaper than Myers. So needless to say, after a while, he went out of business, and the state of Michigan was closing him down, and there was an auction, and there was cute little catfish that size. So I didn't know what it was. At that time, I was, 26 years old. So I got him. I found out that he gets really big. So the Oxidor's Niger cat is now, I don't know, 30 inches, maybe 32, something like that. He's a real big one, and he has a buddy. His name is Hoover. I named him because when we did have him in his aquarium, it was really, really amazing to watch. The gravel, he could just literally pull mouthful into his mouth, sift it out his gills, and eat whatever was in there. So Hoover it was. And then we got another one just 5 years ago. His name's Dyson. So we got Hoover and Dyson. They're really cool catfish that are in the river. But had we not insulated that and just had koi in there, we never would have been able to keep him alive. But he's been with us since 1986. Over the winter, he became ill. And you've had him a long time. This is a fish that when you go to feed him, the koi will come up and eat, but not like him. He'll breach the water, and he has this huge volume sucking action. You put food down there, the koi food, and he'll just vacuum it in like crazy. So the kid that gets the birthday party gets to go in and hand feed Hoover. So kind of a cool element. So the fact that he was on the bottom and he literally flipped over. Now this is a really fat catfish, so he's got a really big white belly. He looks completely dead because it's white. And he's breathing, but that's about it. We have a gentleman in our store by the name of Antonio that's been with us since 1998, who is a graduate from Havana University Vet School back in the probably 50s or whatever. But he's working for us now and has been working for us. He's been talking about retiring now for the last 5 years. But he is the biggest asset to our store that we have because he's an educator and he's a workaholic. And if you have to work in his room with him, you better know how to work because he expects a lot, and he's the reason we do have a fish breeding program. Probably if he does retire, we'll probably not breed near as many fish. He is just a real hard worker and produces some really fantastic fish. The reason I brought him up is that Hoover was upside down, belly up. We put him back in our quarantine room. We have a big gray shipping container that holds water. So we dropped him in there, and between the help of our vet in the community and Antonio, we started giving him injections in order to keep him so he could actually be upright. We got a swimming vest, and we managed to put the swimming vest on him. I wish I had a picture of that to keep him upright so he could actually feel more comfortable. And then for like maybe 2 months, it was at the point we thought, are we really doing any service to this fish? Should we euthanize him? He was that bad. And we kept up with it. We kept giving him the injections, and then eventually we gave him shots of B12, I think it was. We finally got him to eat. And now he's as active and as aggressive eating and as healthy and as strong as he's ever been. You know, he had some bacterial infections over his eyes and stuff. That cleared up. So, yay for the river. And the river happened because of Hoover. I needed a place to put Hoover because I had no idea he was that big until then. And then I certainly learned he was in a 12-foot tank before and he was definitely too small. So I'm like, we're going to put a big river in the store. So thanks to Hoover. No, no. We've had birthday parties for cockatiels. We've had birthday parties for elderly couples. There's probably been some few other unusual occurrences. We might have Hoover coming up. I don't know. Yes, you can hardly see him back there, but here's his little. Here's his face. Here's his eyeballs. Here's his big things. The ripsaw along the side. That's me, obviously, ready to feed him. But so that's the river. There's another shot. There he is. He's a sexy guy, isn't he? He's big. And there's Dyson right next to him. So that's the, oh, we got quite the slideshow here. Okay. That's in the store. And that's, this floor here got completely cut out. So you can just walk in and around. My brother did this. And it turned into, he probably has a picture. Yeah, there's the bus. My daughter, I wish that tank wasn't there. Darn it. My daughter painted that in her senior year, and now she's our social media person. She's like 35 or something like that now. I should know how old my daughter is, but she's around there. That's the bus. There's the car. The idea of the car is it was in when my brother was building the store. It was in the backyard. He got married while he was building the store, and his new wife said that car has got to go, and it's one he picked up at an auction. It was green and it wasn't running. He wanted to fix it someday, so instead he put it up in the air, and then I had the local artist paint kind of like a island scene behind it where he's coming down out of the island. Fred and Ginger, man. Okay, so Fred and Ginger, I got them I got him when I was 24. So we've had this boy for a really long time, and he's quite the ambassador to the classrooms. He goes to all our school tours. We do lots of education outreach type stuff, and he's like the biggest ambassador we got. Birthday parties, he comes out, and he's 80, 85 years old now. So he's still looking just as handsome as when I got him. And then Ginger, I've had Fred and Ginger, but just like Gilligan's Island, anybody ever watch Gilligan's Island? Right? Weren't there two Gingers? Well, I've got two Gingers. This is the second Ginger. The first one got egg bound, and we lost her, so we got another one. But we've had this Ginger here now for probably, I don't know, 30 years, something like that. So this is a view of really trying to really promote and be more relevant to the aquascaping community and planted aquariums. So there was a grant available to the Old Town neighborhood. And at first I was going to redo the side of the store, and they says, no, it doesn't apply for that. And then I was going to do something else. No, it doesn't apply for that. And they said, well, you can do it for merchandising, right? Merchandising. So I'm like, wow. So they had a $25,000 grant, and that literal presentation in the center cost us $25,000. So thanks to Old Town Neighborhood, it was a national grant program. So that's fantastic. And this has worked out really, really well. Got CO2 running in there. Plants do well. It's just really been a gift. And our manager of freshwater, Rebecca. So We get in shipments sometimes twice a week, sometimes every 2 weeks of plants. And then we tend to also, if we go a drought, maybe 2 or 3 weeks without ordering, we do a lot of trimming and then reselling those plants. This little guy, gosh darn it, he has a name, but unfortunately we lost him the other day because of power outage. We had actually a backup aerator on it, but that evidently wasn't enough. So we have another one coming, and it's what is it? L600. You can hand feed this guy. That's one of the things you can't never be cautious enough when you have an aquarium, and when you don't think about doing it, it's exactly when you're gonna have a problem. So he will be my inspiration for encouraging more people to get more and aggressive backups. Don't ever hesitate. But let's see what we got here. So there's another point of view. Behind the tank display is the hut, and that's basically our information center. People bring water samples. We test maybe, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 water samples a day. People just come in all day long, and we test waters. And, the big thing is training your staff to use that as an opportunity to connect, try to understand where they're at, learn a little bit more of the tank, and it's really been a very successful add-on from where we were before to have that as an opportunity. So,
How many staff do you have?
our total store has like 70 staff members. So,
I would say my first couple of experiences going there, I think the thing that I was most impacted by was the selection. You can go out, you can find big stores, but you will be kind of chased down, not quite accosted. And what blew me away, I'm sure this goes to Rick's kind of training because it's all of them. That they're like, how can I help you? How can I help you? And if they've been there a while, they'll come back. Are you all right? Can I help you? Is there anything you're looking for? When you talk about like customer experience, it's like a playbook. I mean, seriously, you leave there feeling like no stone was left unturned.
yeah,
There wasn't a point where even though you were busy,
yeah,
you didn't feel like people were too busy for you.
yeah. Well, it just goes back to the original like purpose that flagged my mother. Why are we in it? Little kid looking up at his mom as she's helping these people, and it's more than just that aspect that I really gained a lot of like enthusiasm for being in this business. It's also watching as my mother would have a tendency of changing people's lives, not just necessarily being successful with their fish tank, but they become friends. People would like pour their hearts out to her when they were having different life crises. A lot of times, here's the classical thing about a certain percentage of fish customers is they may not know it. Many of them don't, but several of them can be difficult and rude, right? And introverted, right? And fish and pets, fish are for everybody, right? And oftentimes it's the individuals, they don't realize when they go from place to place that they're maybe being that put off of other individuals. Like, I mean, let's let's be honest. We're all like protected or shielded from that salesman. You go into your store. If you come into my store and I say, "Can I help you?" Your first response is going to be say no, even if there's three different things you came in to get. Why? Because you've learned over the years when you go to shop, they have one objective and one objective only. What's that? Sell, right? And I must admit, when you have 70 employees, we better sell or we're not in business anymore, right? But when the goal is to sell based on what people can really enhance their experience, then you can be real, you can be connected, you can be honest, and at the same time you can be, you know, recommending, the coolest fish that you might have, you know. So back to the introvert, back to the difficult customer. The reality is if you break through that, because you helped them and they didn't understand wherever they went, nobody would help them, and you actually do that, more often than not, it's like melding away all that guardedness. And before you know, they tend to be one of your most faithful customers. They come in and they call you by their first name, and my lawyer, he is a shark. He is socially speaking, he's a real annoying turd, right? And when he came in, this is back 20, 30 years ago, he would just walk around the store, and if you even just looked at him, he would like growl at you. But he'd go looking around the store, looking around the store. I just happened. He eventually got into the hobby. Eventually, now he's one of my best friends, and he's my lawyer. And I know that if I have anything come up, I got a shark, you know. So we're working with a lot more nano tanks. There's a African cichlid display tank. Um, there's the fan that always dries the floor. Um, there's some view. Those are African cichlids. Those are all African cichlids. That you won't see out front. This particular view is our fish breeding room. So we do have to control roaches, just so you know. Okay. But Florida ships in palmetto. We don't have German roaches. We have the old palmetto bugs. Because every time you get a shipment from Florida, there's a few of those little things treated in the group, So it's a constant battle, but we try to win. Antonio's really good at it. He keeps his place really clean, floors clean, everything that you need to make sure you don't have that problem. But this is the gentleman that I told you that has the degree from Havana University. This is his room. When we moved into our store from our old store, he was doing everything in the basement. I says, no, Antonio, I'm going to build you a room, and you can do all your breeding in here. So this is our breeding room. It's pretty good size. A lot of cool stuff goes on in there. Thank you. That's saltwater. Similar tanks. Those we did not get a community grant for. And it's a pretty ambitious saltwater environment. I've been to, you know, saltwater exclusive store that I think I only envy to be. But for a full line pet store and for being in Michigan, we're one of the more ambitious, reef oriented saltwater shops. We usually have some macroalgae, yes. Yes. That's in the back room. We have a propagation room that's just propagating corals. There's our pond and water garden area. We built that over the years. It used to just be a side yard. I remember that side yard reminds me, before it was that, it was just a driveway, a parking lot, right? And I remember my Element parked out there. And one day I came out and somebody had slashed my tires. So I watched the video. Lo and behold, it's a guy that we caught stealing hamsters that I threw out of the store. Don't come back. And as soon as I told him that, I guess he got really upset at me. So a couple of weeks later, he came back and slashed my tires. He didn't know I had him on camera. This is a guy that was probably, I don't know, 72 years old, somewhere in there. And when we moved from the suburbs, he helped us move. And that's kind of the mode of operation, you be friends to the people that you're going to rip off, I suppose. So I always kind of trusted him until one day I watched him and we boxed up the hamsters, got him some food, and he went out the side door right there and over to his car. And I'm like, holy crap, did that just happen? And so, but we did get reimbursed and we kept him because I took him to court. I won. He had to pay for my tires. There's about a nice koi. Those are beauties. It's one that they come right up. Oh, this is kind of cool. we go out, LCC, if you come up and it's good weather, go to Lansing Community College. This year, we had the first opportunity to kind of manage their Japanese garden. It was actually put together by, um, they had an exchange going on with Japan, and so the Japanese actually designed this whole thing, some very famous Japanese architect, and but it's been a hit and miss kind of thing because you know it, they've had failings. So we took over this year. We sold them 11 nice looking koi. This whole bottom has you notice the rocks in there. They're the bigger rocks, smooth, kind of probably due to the Japanese request. Well, that's a great shelter for babies. So now, just this year, in 1 year, we now are going to have to extract in the spring probably about 1,000 koi. So maybe we should have stayed with just one sex or the other. I guess you usually use females. I don't. Yeah, that's a good question. For the most part, it's limited. The focus is on fish that are otherwise difficult to have healthy and ready and available. Historically, it's been live bears, trying to have nice, healthy live bears, trying to get those from distributors, not very good. Angelfish, rams, and then probably another half dozen, barbs. But fish that are otherwise difficult to ship in and we typically would have problems with, that's what he breeds. Not the most profitable effort because we're not breeding like rare plecos and things like that, although there might be a couple types in there.
Probably the most memorable thing, or one of the most, in my fish keeping hobby in probably 25 years, is went up there. I had no idea how to take care of all your customers, and that dryer wasn't working on the floor. I was sloshing around with my but I started talking to one of your people and told him that I really was getting interested in breeding. And he said, come on. And I think that Zach felt that I left him and went back to Fort Wayne or someplace. He took me back to my room and just had a good old time with me. And you talk about winning loyalty and customers.
Yeah.
When you're not just trying to do these car salesmen and taking care of people. He's a keeper for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, thank you. I'll make sure. Yeah. We were talking about that a little bit before we started here, and it was just the idea, what is the flag that they go towards? There are shop owners that don't necessarily see people, but really are into the fish. And there are shop owners that maybe really are looking at the dollar and trying to figure out how to make the most number of dollars. I could probably do more of that. It would probably be a good thing. But realistically, the flagship, can you be successful? Can that customer be successful and let that follow? Has always been kind of our motto. And the other thing is the people that we hire, you're not fooling them. You're not. You can't be greedy and want to make money. That's not what they came to work for you for, right? And sometimes you hire ones that are probably a little in their shell, but I can tell you if you allow them to be passionate about the animals and teach people about those animals, before you know it, they're coming out of the shells and they're actually being fantastic employees. I remember this back in the 80s, and Vaughn Snook, and his dad came in. He was a high school student and was very introverted. His dad came in like maybe 2 months after I hired him, and he just shook my hand and says, "Thank you so much. My son is a whole different person because he got into something passionate and he came out of his shell." And so we like to provide the atmosphere that they can do that kind of thing. I better go faster. This could go a long time. I didn't pick the number. I said just send me text, so we'll go fast. How's that? Okay. Here's some of the kois we put in their pond. We've been bringing in fish from China. So those are true. We actually took one. Well, Kapil did took one to a show and won that the grand champion. I think that was another one that we won grand champion. There's another view of our quarantine room. So there's two shots there. And so that's where fish come in. Not the prettiest. The concrete didn't work out as well as I'd like as far as the way it looked and painted. But it's a quarantine room. Everybody that we have that comes in gets put into the quarantine room or it gets isolated on the floor as far as not sold. Um, Generally, it's as needed. After 30, 40 years, you learn what the length. So some a week, some 4 weeks. Just depends on the fish species. And the other thing is the power of the microscope. You can kind of do some checks on these things, especially if you lose any, find out what is actually ailing them on the microscope. That's courtesy of Antonio, who's taught all of us how to use the microscope. And that can make it far more powerful than time, because you can. Oh yeah, if we have things that are on the bottom, we're going to pull out the gills, we're going to take off the scales. If it involves pulling out the guts and stuff, two or three know how to pull out the guts and look at what's going on inside. Um, the only thing I could offer is that probably Antonio we could probably come up with some, like a internship or something where they could come and just be with him for a period of time. Yeah.
It's not.
Well, he when he was in Cuba, great stories. But like he has some spots here that has no feeling from malnourishment, right? I mean, this is a guy that went through some really tough times. Um, he um, went ahead and quit the government and relied exclusively on his breeding of his fish in his backyard because he knew when he went to apply, his wife was Chinese, when he went to apply for whatever, what do you call it? Yeah, to get out of the country, to get permission to leave the country. If he worked for the government, they would never let him. So he worked he sold to the government fish for pennies, not even pennies, quarters of pennies, and then had a black market there of a true hobby. That's how they did it. If you wanted fish, you'd go to Antonio's place, or you want to go to this place and you'd pay realistic dollars to actually have those types of fish. So that's how he kind of survived in Cuba until he came to the United States. And then the day came where a lady with the immigration services came in, sat down with him. He hardly could speak English at that point, and we kind of he's showing me pictures of fish, fish, fish in his backyard. This is arranged, all that. And then the last document was his Havana um, vet certificate. It was like, okay, hiding what do they call it? Burying the lead. All right, that's Fred. He goes out to public areas, like I told you. My daughter. She does not look like that now. That's the one that does our social media. My granddaughter looks a lot like that. We might even. There's my daughter. She now. What's really cool about my daughter? She's been asked and accepted and has been on. It may not mean much to you guys. WPA, World Pet Association. There's only a couple organizations throughout the United States that actually represent the whole industry, and one of them is the WPA. They put on the biggest trade show. It's called Super Zoo out in Las Vegas. It's the size of, I think it was like, I don't know, 18 football fields or something like that. Some huge event. She's now in their they're bored. She's extremely intelligent and capable and very intuitive about, what the real needs of a pet store are. And she's followed up where I kind of got into educating customers. She definitely is far more into like social outreach of the community, drumming up the beat of support local. And there's my wife. She is our bird room manager, store manager, and puts up with my crap. There's my granddaughter, though she's now close to 4. I don't have to point. You can figure out which one that is. It's not me. Oh, I see. My daughter, when she was pregnant, they do that on the Late Show, Colbert's Small Business Bump. Well, she put in a video about her being pregnant and bump, and right when she was doing it, her water broke, and so she sent in the video, and he ended up having her on the show, and pretty cool. Hey, that's COVID. Oh, there you go. So I'm the pond guy. So and Kapil, the one that did the slides, is this guy right here. This guy right there, Rob Cook. You don't know anything about Plegosmus, he's your guy. Before Rob Cook came on, I probably had at most 10 species of plecos. Since he's been on board, I usually have like 30 different species of plecos, maybe more. I remember the one time we checked and we had like 50 species of plecos. So he, just Saturday, he was like, "Hey, Rick, I sold 5 plecos already." I'm like, "Way to go, Rob." Did a radio show for 15 years, just stopped like 2 months ago. That's that. There's my wife. She's definitely the bird whisperer. That's her gray. There's another shot of my granddaughter. There she is. They look kind of similar. There you go. My pride and joy right there. When you get older, my age, different health problems, had a serious car accident, said I was in a wheelchair, it makes you rethink everything. And I'll tell you what, I've been a workaholic all my life. I work every day in that pet store. Like I don't take weekends. I don't do any of that stuff. I just work every day. But it has its toll. And so I try to take more time off and try to engage more toll because my daughter resents the fact that I work, at times, it bubbles up. But, if I had one thing to live for now, it'd be my granddaughter. She is just adorable. And questions. There's me with her on the playground.
Couple of trivia questions. How many gallons?
You guys do I need this? You guys loud? Am I loud enough?
How many gallons of water are in pets?
Well, we've never done that mathematical. I have no idea. Come and count. A lot of gallons. A lot of gallons.
How many species of fish do you normally have in the store?
Come and count. I remember one time somebody did a list of loaches. Right now we don't have that many, but at the time I had like 20 loaches varieties, So it always surprises me what we have when we have it. We write it down. Biggest thing is trying to just stay better organized and making less mistakes. And every time we make mistakes, it's like, how is it that's even possible after 40 years? But we make mistakes just like everybody else. So.
Just to continue to draw out, we are, as Steve said, on a trip. We have a Aquarium Society trip to go out. Restore all the fish tanks. You want to spend time because you're afraid to miss something. Like it's so big, it's almost like a treasure. You can walk down the aisle 10 times, and on that 10 times, like, no way. And I think that's part of the fun of the adventure of the store with all the different animated sides of it.
Yeah.
I've been in that store 4 or 5 times already, and I see something new and different and awesome every time.
Yeah. And that's when weekends, weekdays, zip codes are kind of close knit. But on weekends, our zip codes from customers come from everywhere. Somebody was mentioning Flint and Fenton, and you know, yes, every weekend, there's plenty of people coming from there. Occasionally we get individuals from Fort Wayne, evidently, but it comes from a very wide area on the weekends. But yeah, and probably we have a really good selection of fish right now, but probably it'll only get better because we're doing some remodels, and so we're just getting online half of the new stuff, and we got another thing. So I would say within 2 or 3 months, that might not be a bad time to really hit the crescendo. So, yes. So we have a really, each department's run individually. Like my wife manages the bird department. We have two managers for the reptile room. The the bus divides the small animals and reptiles from the rest of the store. So that's kind of like the small animal reptile shop. Um, and then we have dog and cat in the middle, right? But it's mainly birds, reptiles, small animals, saltwater, freshwater. Yeah, that's in the reptiles. Yeah, lots of bugs, lots of tarantulas, you know, lots of characters like that. Frogs, poison dart frogs. Um, so, yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Um, you know, ours isn't deep enough, but we manage because we keep the pump running throughout the winter, and we have a heater that drops to the bottom, and we have heaters that float on top. And so far, for the last 6, 8 years, we've been successful. But that's not the responsible answer because that's only like 2.5 feet, and that's not good. Uh, and the only reason it's 2.5 feet is when we started getting in the little backhoe, we managed to hit a gas line, so we figured that's probably where you should stop. So, but 3 foot can be certainly good for goldfish. 4 foot probably more ideal for koi. Not really, not really. And the whole goal of a pond and why they live in the winter is they have someplace warm to go, and also that they aren't toxified, if you will. It's probably not the right word. But the idea of keeping it open has everything to do with the biological activity as the pond with the rubber liner. Think of like my my mother's canning days. Like flip that down, your little orange washer, and you pop it, and then everything stays tight. Well, because it's a rubber liner instead of an earthen pond, it ices over completely. And if you don't have an aerator or a heater or something on the top, the gases accumulate in the water and kill the fish. Cool. Um, oh, I think we just paid $12,000 a month. I it is a major expense. We have a compressor that runs sponge filters everywhere instead of anything we plug in otherwise. We spend a lot of money on heaters and heating the water. There's no way of getting around that. Although I've just realized recently, I feel, like I said, I've been in 40 years. How can I not know these things? But EHEIM heaters are way longer than I ever would want a heater to be for my tank, but it's because they're highly efficient. So we're actively now only putting EHEIM heaters in our tanks, but we're just starting that. So most of our heaters are less efficient. So I'm anxious about. We did buy. A friend of mine went out, stopped breeding fish up in Cadillac. We went up and grabbed all that stuff, and he has a whole box of. He learned it earlier on, and he had a whole box of EHEIM heaters that I'm anxious to get in all our tanks. So other energy savings. Um, No, $12,000. Sell more fish. Sell more fish.
What's your favorite fish?
Frogfish. Yeah. Everybody know what a frogfish is? No? They're a saltwater creature. They walk on their little arms. They have the little fishing rod on top of their nose. Little move things around like little plankton. Fish come go to eat it and they eat the fish. But the shapes that they kind of mimic like sponges and such. So the color patterns on them are really cool. They're fat and pudgy. I just think they're the coolest. They definitely don't do well with gravel in the tank though. Early on, I learned by cutting them open that they were sucking in the gravel and killing them. So they need to either be sand or bare bottom in order to make sure they live. Axolotls, same thing, exactly the same thing. We do carry a lot of axolotls. Somebody wanted to bring in 9 axolotls, and so we had to go look at the rack, and we already have like 50. So we're like, I can't help you right now. So if you know anybody that wants axolotls, one, we have a nice variety of axolotls, and I have some very passionate people and some information to hand out that can really guide them down the journey of keeping those properly.
If somebody was interested in starting their own fish store, what advice would you give?
Well, my first opening comment was we opened at 200, 300 square foot. I would say follow your knowledge and passion and only expand as that expands, right? Yeah, and honestly, people have came in and looked at our store and, again, their flag was a little different than mine. So they look at it and think about lots of money to be made, right? And so they try doing that big and fail miserably, right? It's like you would have to be just shoveling money at it for too long in order for that to really work. It's just taken, in our case, since 1982 to kind of create. We started, like I mentioned, first we had some knowledge and some passion and some interest and I think a good flag to go by. And then it was 2,000 square foot back in 1982. And in 85, we went to 4,000 square foot. And then in 95, we went to 6,000 square foot. And then, no, that was before that. In 95, we ended up going to 9,300 square foot. So it's just, what did we always try to, one, when the merchandise started falling off, we had more going on than the space could handle. And honestly, we had more accumulated clientele to emulate that. Because somebody was mentioning there's a shop here that pretty nice, although it doesn't have everything, right? But what I heard from that is there's a shop here that is doing it right because you had good things to say about that shop. And so I would say the one thing that I would suggest is as consumers, anything you can do to support those stores, even if it's, I got to come back next week to get what he's going to order in for me instead of ordering it off the internet because he recommended something, support those guys that do step up and do it and know that the ones you want to have in place thriving in your communities are the ones that are going to have the right flag, And if you have the right flag, do it. But there's plenty of flags that can fly and you can be successful, whether it's just trying to chase money or whether you're really a passionate, focused hobbyist that can breed just about every pleco and people come to you because you have all that stuff. I'm just a pro, let's get more people into the hobby, let's help people into the hobby, and let's be there for people when they want to be in the hobby, and hopefully that keeps us afloat. So far it has. So, only for 40 years. Yeah, we try hard. So, profitability of the whole store operation doesn't make a whole lot every year. Relative to the total sales, not a lot of money that I can just go out and spend separately, but it feeds the whole institution over time. And every year we're putting something in, we're remodeling something, we're redoing things. As far as sales go, I can speak more accurately on that, 70% of our sales is fish related. So that's a substantial part of our business, even though it doesn't represent 70% of our space. Now, one thing that we did add on, which is really cool, I wish I had a picture of it up here. There was a roundabout way I looked at buying two buildings across the street. One of them is what used to be your traditional sprayed them down car washes that a guy bought, and then he at least sided it to make it look nice, didn't do much on the inside. I finished off the insides, epoxied the floor and whatnot. But that's now where our maintenance vehicles come in, load up. Used to be in the main store, and we had to run water from like here to that back wall. Once they loaded up, they had to carry the cart out to the car and load it up in the middle of the winter. And now, and it would take at least 5 times longer to fill up every 2.5-gallon jugs. But now they can just open the thing up and it just gushes down there, fills it, and then they can move right over to the car and they can put it right in. It's right, turn your body around and it's right there. So, you'd think I'd be making a lot more money than I do. But we have a business that's successful. It's doing what it needs to do. To date, we're in the community. We have a profit every year. So, we'll be around. We'll be around. I need to worry about maybe, you don't want to admit you're getting older, but those are realities. So I got to figure out that whole thing. I've got a daughter that'd be just excellent at making the business continue, but I got to let up on some of the reins in order for her to do that. So, any other questions?
You guys do really like home breeders who like buy stuff from them, encourage that at all?
Buy fish from breeders? Oh yeah, absolutely.
People that breed from
Yeah, in fact, feel free. I can give everybody my phone number. You can text me and say, hey, I'm coming up. This is what I've got. And if I can't answer it, I'll get it to the person. Capilla would be a good one to throw it by, but also Finney. We met Finney. He's now in charge of like all incoming systems and fish and that type of thing. So the main thing is letting us know plenty ahead so we don't buy a shipment of them and we have like 300 of what you want to sell. And I'm like, nah, not really, But as long as it's something that we can use and have demand for, and we can still make a good margin on it, yeah, more than happy to do that.
Now, do you pay cash or just for credit?
Well, there are some creatures that I do pay cash, like axolotls. I just write out checks, right? Because I can't get enough axolotls. It depends on what the creature is as to whether I can pay cash or not. If I'm indifferent, I'd be happy to have yours versus where I get them from. Then it might be credit. If it's I can't get that from someplace else, then cash is king. So it has to be a sliding scale. It has to work for me, And sometimes it works for me to pay cash. Sometimes it works for me to have credit. And sometimes it works to just say, hey, I already have that, So, but I'd always be interested. I'd rather one have connections and opportunities, and hopefully, for instance, there'll be a day when Antonio actually does retire, and I'd like to have a network of friends so that when we're not breeding them, that we have somebody to buy from. I did drive down here. It's a bit of a drive. So anybody that drives all the way up to Lansing to get fish is quite the hobbyist, and I really, really appreciate that effort. And driving down here was kind of very rewarding in many ways because it made me reflect and think about the travels going the other way, that people are willing to take those kind of trips for the hobby, for our store, that kind of thing. My mother always said, it's a hobby where people are always going to travel. That's why whenever I go to a town, first thing I'm going to hit is a pet store. It took maybe 10, 15 years for my wife to get used to that, but eventually she realized that's what's going to happen. Oh yeah, I remember selling that to you. I remember selling that, and that was a good tank, right? Yeah. Yeah. Nice. 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 Nice.
What we need is a Preuss Pets franchise. So yeah, we can talk
No, honestly, no. All you need is somebody that's willing to put their life efforts into it and willing to fly the flag that really counts. That's all. I can't do that. It's just not that it's not that easy. Every day is some days are torturous just trying to make solve all the problems that you have, and some days are glorious because, well, people come from great distances. You have fish that you've never seen before. I get excited every time I get another tetra in. Toucan tetra is really cool. This I think it was Ampa tetra. That was really really awesome. Now I like things that maybe everyday customers don't, and I have to remember that our store really caters more to the everyday customer than the devout hobbyists. It's just by nature. Those are the people that need help. They're the people that are getting into the hobby. They're the people that find most value in us being in it, and they're local. So that's going to be the ever expanding market. I'd love to see the demographics of hobbyists and all the hobbyists raise their hands and what we've done in Lansing in the Lansing area, because it's just every day comes by with a huge number of people coming in just enjoying the hobby. So there is not. There's been different. There is a saltwater club. They're the ones that put on that frag swap, right? And that tends to be most of what they do. They don't get together too much, but they put on that big frag swap, and that's cool. And I'm not sure why that is. I mean, part of it might be that we do fill the niche of at least helping hobbyists. Grand Rapids has a super successful one. You know where they're all at. I don't need to tell you. So uh, but it's something that we would embrace if that was the case. We actually created the saltwater hobby group. Invited some different peoples into our store, and we got them started and went from there. So,
What would you say would be the minimum nowadays to start a fish store, like dollar wise?
um, I just depends on how big you bite off. We started when we started. So we had a friend of ours. This is where I think passion and commitment and willingness takes over the number of dollars you have to throw at it. When we started out in 1982, my parents were on welfare. I was in college, and I dropped out of college, and I lived in the back of the pet store in a strip mall, which I wasn't supposed to do. We opened the store with a guy that wrote a $3,500 check for rent as a friend of ours that got stock for it, and that check bounced. And we had absolutely nothing. There was a wholesaler. Wolverton was there. Now it's Phillips. There was a wholesaler in our neighborhood, and we would just take everything we could that we sold and run out there and buy more stuff and bring it back. You know, so does somebody have? I would think you're going to want 50 grand, something like that. And a big heart and a lot of determination and a lot of focus and a lot of every one of our racks were used that we bought that we put in when we moved into Old Town. Uh, just make it out of a shoestring, and make it work. But so I can't say I did mine in '82. I really don't know about now. but it would not, and that would be, just a fish shop, something like that. That's a good question. I was not married, and my, I, I went on, this is a year after we opened. We had a guy that, his name was Greg from Chicago, big, rolly, happy guy. And what he would do is he'd have his own truck, like big van, and he'd go around up into Wisconsin to get gravel and different places to get fish, and he would just come up and jobber that stuff, right? And I just thought that was the most fascinating thing. So one day I said, "Can I go on a trip with you? I just want to go have that same experience." I remember going down to, is it Bloomington, Indiana? No, yeah, maybe. It was but just going everywhere and stayed with him for a week, and it was fantastic. And I came back, and my wife, not yet my wife, was temporarily moved into my apartment while I was away. And so that's how we met. So, and then eventually she actually moved in, and the tortoise had to leave my house. But it was worth it. It was worth it. So he now lives in the store. He was my favorite pet, and it was a good sacrifice. I had a big African cichlid tank. That's the only time I was actually a hobbyist, because I had a nice African cichlid tank in my apartment at the time. And so that was in 1983. Well, I met her in 83 and we got married in 84. And she's been with me the whole time. So essentially she's been there since practically the beginning. I have, my wife has like 50 parakeets upstairs breeding, and we have one cat. My cat's name is Trudy, and she was a cat that was stray outside the store. The employees brought her in because we were going to call animal control, but it was the most affectionate little cat for being outside. So I said, "No, going home." I got it fixed, took it home, and it's been just the most fantastic cat ever. So, yeah. What's that? I did take a dog home a couple days ago. Somebody found the dog. We have one of those machines that can actually check the microchips. And so after we found out he didn't have one, the people are like, "Well, we have this dachshund and he doesn't really like dogs and other dogs and stuff. Is there any chance you guys could help out?" My daughter was like, "Hey, Dad, could you take this dog home?" And I'm like, "Well, I should ask Debbie." So I asked my wife, and she was okay with it. And I took her home. She wasn't really all that excited about it, but I took her home, and yeah, and it was night. The Lions were playing, and I had her on my lap and watching TV. We had a great little time. A little lap dog. Had a fun time. And then the people called and said, "Hey, we're missing." They had given it to their mother that had Alzheimer's, and that didn't work out. So they were keeping it, and it was new to their home, and it got loose. My car accident, right? So my last parting, why I was in the wheelchair, right? So I'm driving from my house to the store, and I'm not paying attention, as in I was looking at my phone. Really short, not very long. I mean, literally 5 seconds. I look up, and lo and behold, as I'm crushing into it, it says Sloan's septic tank cleaning. So I ran at 55 miles an hour, no braking. Well, I did brake evidently because it busted this leg up, something fierce. But I ran into that at 55 miles an hour, twirled around into a cornfield. My family, it was an exciting time at the time. But I'm here. I'm alive. I lived through it. So glad to be here. Appreciating every day. I'm not your usual speaker. I'm sorry I did not give you a wealth of knowledge when it comes to your fish hobby, but that's who I am. So thank you very much.